You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and I've received a request by a Rise in Crime listener named Krista. She tipped me off to new evidence in a 25-year-old missing persons case out of Shelby, North Carolina. And to be honest, I knew nothing about this case. When Asha went missing, my youngest child, who was born at 2.5 pounds, had just gotten home from a 2-month stay in the NICU. And Peyton, from obviously Into the Dark and Murder with My Husband, well, she was just 3 years old. And my oldest, Mason, was about to turn 6. You guys, I was in the early motherhood era, deep in that era. But once I read about her case, after Krista sent in the suggestion, of course I was heartbroken. But I'm also so intrigued by the new evidence released last week. So let's get everyone caught up on Asha Degree, the beautiful 9-year-old that went missing on Valentine's Day in the year of 2000. And Valentine's Day in the Degree home was more than just love day. Asha's parents, Harold and Aquila Degree, were married on the holiday in 1988. A year later, in 1989, Asha's older brother, O'Brien, was born. And then, a year after that, in August of 1990, Asha was born. Asha and her brother would be considered like latchkey kids. That's not a term you hear much anymore, but they would return from school and let themselves into their home that rested just outside of the metropolitan area of Charlotte in the city of Shelby. So it's kind of like a residential subdivision. But with 2 working parents, the kids had rules, and they kept to them mostly, but they also parented themselves for portions of their day. And extended family members helped in the parenting duties as well. The Degree household was a religious home, and also a home where the children's friends were mostly extended family. Harold and Aquila ran a sheltered home as well. No computer and limited TV time. This environment led Asha to be a little bit cautious. Some would even say shy. And her mother told Jet magazine that Asha was very content to stay within the limits that her parents had constructed. Asha was particularly scared of dogs, which also added to her hesitancy to be around unfamiliar circumstances. Well, back in 2000, a 3-day weekend awaited O'Brien and Asha because school was closed on Friday the 11th. And of course, they had the 12th and 13th off for the weekend. On that Friday, Asha spent the day at her aunt's house while her parents both worked. That wasn't a big deal though. Her aunt lived near her home, which made it possible for both Asha and her brother to still attend their individual basketball practices that were held on that Friday, this for their youth rec league. On Saturday, Asha had her weekly basketball game, and she was quite the budding talent, playing point guard and excelling. Unfortunately, they lost that Saturday game. That was their first loss of their season. And even worse, Asha fouled out. Her parents told authorities that she cried after the game with her teammates consoling her, but it didn't completely ruin the day. Asha gathered her emotions and attended her brother's game later that afternoon, seemingly content and engaged. The next day, Sunday the 13th, well, that was filled with some normal activities and then some weird events. Asha and O'Brien did attend church, again with extended family. And at about 8 o'clock that night, Asha and O'Brien returned to their home and quickly readied for bed. It was a school night, and the two were expected to obey the designed nighttime bed routine. At around 9 o'clock, a nearby car accident took out the power in the residential neighborhood. The power was restored 3.5 hours later. Prompted by the power returning, Harold walked down the hall and checked on Asha and O'Brien, who shared a bedroom. Harold said both kids were asleep in their beds. Harold then remained awake for about 2 more hours, and when he finally retired to his bed at 2:30 in the morning on Valentine's Day, because we've moved into Monday, he checked in on his 2 children again, and he told authorities they were both asleep. Asha was nestled in her rose-colored blanket with a poster of Winnie the Pooh hanging above her bed. Now, apparently, Harold was mistaken with what he saw, because shortly after he closed the door, O'Brien heard Asha's bed squeak. The 10-year-old told detectives he thought Asha was just maybe readjusting her sleeping position, but that's not what occurred. Detectives instead believed that Asha quietly snuck out of bed, gathered her book bag that they assumed she had previously packed with some clothes and personal items, and then she tiptoed down the hallway, leaving the sleepy Degree house at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, it seems Asha headed on foot north of her home and eventually reached Highway 18. Several motorists would later say they saw the young girl walking on the side of the state highway. Shocked that a young child would be out in the middle of the rainy and stormy night, the motorists had detailed memories of what they had seen. It was way out of the ordinary. They reported that Asha was wearing a long-sleeved white shirt and white pants, and she was carrying a bag. One man, really concerned about Asha, turned his car around, trying to return to the child who was alone. He drove past her in an attempt to, maybe gather more context clues, and then he turned around again to approach the girl. Now, we have no idea what was motivating Asha or how she was feeling, but the motorist reported that he must have spooked the 9-year-old because as he slowed to park the car and approached the girl, he says Asha took off running into the neighboring wooded area. Now, remember, all of this is happening without Asha's parents even knowing what was going on. At 5:45 that morning, Asha's mother, Aquila, readied herself for the morning, and then she filled the bathtub with water for the two children to each take a turn getting ready for school. When Aquila opened her children's bedroom door at 6:30, she found O'Brien asleep in his bed, but Asha was missing. Can you even imagine her shock and terror? Aquila desperately ran through the small home, looking for Asha everywhere. She even checked the family cars to see if Asha had gone outside and gotten in them. When Aquila woke Harold and explained that she couldn't find Asha, he kind of tried to settle her. He dismissed the worry and said that Asha was probably across the street at her grandmother's home. Quickly calling the grandmother's home, Aquila was told by her sister-in-law that Asha wasn't at that house either. Within 10 minutes of discovering that Asha was missing, Aquila was already speaking to the responding police officer, explaining the activities from the day before and also the expected morning routine that had been violently altered when she discovered her daughter missing. While the police called in search dogs, trying to pick up Asha's scent, Aquila ran from neighbor's house to neighbor's house, checking to see if Asha was in any of those homes or if those neighbors had seen anything suspicious. There was no Asha. But the community responded, and by 7 o'clock that morning, neighbors were already searching the surrounding areas. The family's fellow church members were marshaled, and they were searching as well. By the end of the daylight on Monday, Valentine's Day, the only thing that had been found was a solo mitten, and Aquila said it did not belong to Asha. Now, searches continued into Tuesday, and finally, some evidence was found. Candy wrappers were located in a shed that belonged to a local business along that highway that Asha was walking, and also near where the motorist said Asha had run towards. Along with the candy wrappers were a yellow hair bow, a green marker, and a pencil. Aquila believed all of that belonged to Asha. Something weird happened, though. Also in the shed was a photograph of another black girl near the age of Asha. And to this day, that young girl in the photo has never been identified. Or, if she has been identified, police haven't shared that information. Well, back at home, Aquila was taking an inventory of Asha's belongings. She realized that some of her clothes were missing, including her favorite jeans. After searching for a week, with an estimated 9,000 man-hours being expended, detectives called off the search. Sheriff Dan Crawford said they had come up empty, and at this time they had no further areas to focus their attention. He did beg the community to continue looking, and he urged the media to keep Asha's disappearance in the headlines. For 10 years, the case lay dormant. But Sheriff Crawford, well, he never gave up hope. With the help of the FBI and North Carolina's State Bureau of Investigation, the search for Asha reignited. The new working theory was that Asha had begun planning her departure from her home probably days earlier. And for many, this working theory was just kind of odd. First of all, she's really young. Runaways are usually over the age of 12, and she's just 9. She also comes from a loving family. She has cousins. Her parents aren't fighting. She attends church and school with enjoyment. There just weren't issues in her life, at least apparent ones. But they couldn't come up with another theory for her leaving her home that night. They did, however, believe she met with foul play, unexpected foul play. That next month, her case exploded with media attention. America's Most Wanted produced an episode. Montel Williams featured Asha's disappearance on his show. Even Oprah devoted a segment to the 10-year anniversary of Asha's disappearance. The next month, a large billboard was erected near her potential abduction site. And then, a year later, a stock car driver put a picture of Asha on the hood of his car so that fans would be made aware of her tragic story. Well, 11 years after she went missing, Asha's book bag was finally found by construction crew members along Highway 18. The bag, wrapped in 2 black trash bags, was found about 26 miles from the disappearance site. The worker who found it said the bag was marked, probably by her mother, with her name and phone number. Also in the bag was a New Kids on the Block band t-shirt. Aquila said it wasn't Asha's. Over the years, Aquila has continued to decorate her home with pictures of Asha as a child and also pictures of what Asha is expected to look like if she was found today. Her mother has not given up hope. Throughout all of these years, she has even said she expects every day that Asha will walk through her front door. Now, a few clues have trickled out here and there. This after the FBI began looking deeper into the case in 2010. In 2015, it was revealed that Asha might have gotten into a dark green older car like a Lincoln Continental. And when I say old, like 1970-ish old. Then in 2017, the FBI teamed up with a new organization, the Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team. Through that team, they have revealed that over 300 interviews have been conducted during this investigation. Well, all of this led to a new surprise in 2020. The parents' hopes were raised, then dashed, when Marcus Mellon, a convicted sex felon, said he had knowledge about Asha's disappearance and where she could be found. It was proven to be all made up. So that leads us to the updates in the case. Last fall, and then this February, authorities executed multiple search warrants in which they seized physical evidence. One item seized, a green car, a 1960s-ish Rambler that might be the one that was spotted by witnesses back in 2000. The property owner, where the car was seized, has now been identified as 80-year-old Roy Lee Dedman. He and his wife Connie live at that property that was searched. And other properties were searched where the daughters of Roy and Connie live. Lizzie Foster, who lives in Texas, Sarah Capel, who lives nearby in Shelby, and then the youngest daughter, Anna Lee Ramirez, who lives somewhat close in Charlotte. Some other items that were seized were computers and journals, some cameras, a pair of earrings, SD cards, paperwork, VHS tapes, and weirdly, a tooth in a Ziploc bag. Now, all of this came out this month when Channel 9 and the Shelby Star out of North Carolina obtained the search warrants of the phone records and properties. Included in those obtained records were tons of calls and texts. The key texts and calls were between family members of the Dedmans, specifically their 3 daughters and their significant others. One text sent by their daughter, Lizzie, well, it reads like this. The theory is, I did it. Accident. Covered it up. The responding text by another daughter reads, they think it's our shirt. It's not her shirt. Her mom says it wasn't hers. Then the next text reads, I don't remember that shirt. I'm scared though. Dad is probably going to be a huge suspect. Okay, are you following me here? These girls would have been in their teens, like 16, 15, and 13 years old when Asha was possibly killed. And clearly, law enforcement believes they have knowledge of the potential murder, or, as Lizzie is worried, they think she could be the killer. Now, more texts have been revealed. In another text exchange, one of the family members wrote, I feel so horrible. So horrible. I don't know what to do. I caused this. Then another relative responded and wrote, no, you didn't. The text exchanges also reference the family attorney, David Teddy, and he's giving advice to the family about the situation. Now, the kids go back and forth, saying how the attorney told them to all just be quiet and not talk with anyone. Okay, so we have the texts as an update to the case, but there's more. Back on the 10th of February, a police lieutenant offered one of Roy and Connie Dedman's children, it looks like it's Lizzie, a polygraph test. She refused, and then she told them she needed to make a phone call. She made a phone call, and then she told the lieutenant that she absolutely would not be taking a polygraph. Okay, smart girl. Now, I think we can assume she called her lawyer. Maybe not. Maybe it was her significant other, or maybe her dad. But Occam's razor here, the most likely answer is she called her lawyer. Now, reporting is stating she might have then taken a polygraph later that day anyway. And in that polygraph, she had some deception in her answers. Either way, she is clearly in law enforcement's crosshairs. All right, so we've got the texts. What kicked off the warrants? You have to have a reason other than proximity to a possible crime scene in order to get a legitimate judge to sign off on at least 4 warrants. Well, back in the fall of 2024, a man named Thad showed up at the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office. He was claiming he had heard one of the Dedman's daughters confess to killing Asha. He said he had heard her say this back in the mid-2000s, so just a few years after the disappearance. He said he went to bars and to house parties with the Dedman's daughters. He knew them. Thad said he was at one of those house parties with Lizzie and Sarah, the oldest and middle daughters of the Dedmans. He said Lizzie got all emotional at that house party and she began sobbing. She was also pretty drunk, according to Thad. He said she began confessing to killing Asha, and she allegedly made that statement more than once that night. During one of the sobbing confessions, allegedly Sarah heard Lizzie, and Thad said Sarah grabbed Lizzie's head and told Lizzie to shut the F up. Thad said he remembered all of it because it was out of character for Sarah to be this aggressive and for Lizzie to say she did something like that. So that led to the warrants to watch the iCloud accounts of the 3 daughters, and investigators tried to watch Roy's phone, the dad, but he does not use an iCloud account to back up his phone, so they couldn't uncover much. Now, in additional texts, the daughters are just distraught, and it also appears that the girls are being influenced by their father. He's kind of telling them how to behave through the investigation. Now, the text exchanges also show how much pressure the girls are receiving from law enforcement. Multiple visits by LEOs. One text indicates that law enforcement is telling the girls if they don't cooperate, then the outcomes will be much worse for them. Now, one more very intriguing part of this story. When the book bag was recovered, all the items were tested for DNA. 2 of the items returned with evidentiary results. Those results were run through a genealogical database. Just hold on to that for a second. The other sample was linked to one of the 3 daughters. That was probably the band t-shirt that had that sample. All right, so who is Russell Bradley Underhill? Russell lived at one of the 2 nursing facilities that were operated by Roy and Connie Dedman. And unfortunately, Russell is dead. He died alone in his apartment on Christmas Day in 2004. He was found slumped over on his couch. The 54-year-old was a Vietnam vet who struggled with substance abuse. A cause of death was never determined despite an autopsy being conducted. Now you might be asking, can they exhume his body and do further testing? The answer is no. He was cremated. So what's clear here? The Dedmans and Russell were very much in contact in 2000 when Asha disappeared. And he died before the book bag was found that then was tested and his DNA was found on it. Now, Roy Dedman was even listed as Russell's emergency contact on his medical records. These guys are connected. Oh, I have so many questions that can't be answered. As of now, authorities are saying Asha was killed, murdered, and it looks like their strongest suspects are the Dedmans. Their home is 6 minutes away from Asha's disappearance site, and that disappearance site is sandwiched between the Dedmans' home and the care facilities that the Dedmans owned. Asha's parents are still alive. At a community walk on February 8th of this year, Aquila told a reporter from the Charlotte Observer that she still believes her baby girl is alive. She said all she has left is hope. Of course, I'm now following this case. Thanks to Krista for the heads up. I'll keep you all updated, and you let me know what you think in the comments. And now to a story out of Michigan, where a creative judge has handed down a most interesting punishment to some Walmart shoplifters. Judge Jeffrey Clothier started doling out his new form of punishment for shoplifters at various Walmart locations near Detroit. The thieves will be required to wash cars for free in the parking lots of the superstores. How many thieves? Nearly 100. The washing events will be part of like a Saturday community day in the springtime. And Walmart is thrilled. They're even going to provide the water and supplies for the washing event. Now the judge, he's getting in on it as well. He said he will be at one of the community events helping the thieves who he says aren't really bad people. He told the AP that stealing doesn't always mean you're a bad person. Sometimes people are just down on their luck. He then said consequences are important and that washing cars and potentially being embarrassed in your community might stem the numerous misdemeanor infractions. I hope he's correct, and I appreciate his creativity. And now to Baltimore. Oh, Baltimore, you are always good for a crime story. Shocking video has been released from a traffic cam in the Butchers neighborhood of Baltimore. It revealed the hit and run accident that happened last week. WBAL TV says at around 9:30 p.m., a 29-year-old pedestrian can be seen crossing the street when a blue Amazon van slowly hits the pedestrian, then proceeds to drive over her in the crosswalk. Now, the driver is going so slow that he kind of stops briefly after the front tires run over the victim. Then the driver slowly rolls over the victim with the back tires. The driver then stops, parks the van, gets out, and walks back to check on the woman who is lying on the ground yelling for help, and she's moving around slightly. After several seconds, the driver walks away without rendering any aid. He gets back in his van and leaves the scene of the accident. About that same time, another car pulls over to help the injured woman. Someone does call 911. Probably the second car that arrived on the scene. Maybe the Amazon driver, we don't know. And emergency personnel transferred the victim to a local hospital. She is recovering from her injuries. Amazon has offered a statement, and it's kind of hollow. It reads like this: "We were made aware of this terrible incident today. The driver in question has been suspended from delivery on our behalf, and we're working with his employer and law enforcement as they investigate." All right, I'm not sure what I was expecting. maybe some help for the victim. And maybe I'm just being naive. They are probably expecting a lawsuit of some sort, so why help now? Or maybe I've just gotten cynical at this point. Hopefully, the victim will be healed up quick, and hopefully, that driver is never contracted with Amazon or any other delivery service again. And before we end today's podcast, a quick programming note. I recorded this podcast early due to traveling over the weekend. Right before I went to production, it was revealed in the Karen Reed Boston case, the one we talked about in last week's episode. Well, there was a court hearing where new evidence has come to light that may dramatically alter the defense's case. It seems that 2 expert witnesses were paid for their testimony. Okay, that's not weird, but the payment may have altered what they testified to, kind of like a buy-off to the tune of $20,000. These experts were testifying about a recreation of the car accident, or what prosecutors say happened with Karen Reed backing over her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Now, Karen's attorneys are saying they have done nothing wrong, but the judge was visibly upset when she ended the hearing. She called her concerns over the new evidence, quote, grave. Apparently, messages were shown in the hearing where the expert witnesses and the defense were communicating, but the witnesses were supposed to be aiding the prosecution, or at least they had been hired by federal investigators. So it was on the Fed's dime when they were brought in, and they are communicating with the defense. Now, the prosecutor felt like he was duped in the first trial by not knowing that the defense and the experts were in communication. So, Judge Canone told everyone that she is suspending the hearing until tomorrow, so Tuesday. She will reconvene and give her conclusion to the new evidence. I'm obviously following that information. I didn't want you to think I left you in the dark. I will cover what is revealed in that hearing on Thursday's episode. And also, because I recorded early, Thursday's episode was barely released when I sent the show off to production for Monday's episode. So I don't have much in the way of comments to share with you. I'll catch back up with all of those comments when we join back together. All right, that's your Monday episode of Rise in Crime. Thanks for the little hiccup in timing, but I was so interested with today's first case from Krista, and I love that. Please keep giving me your case suggestions. I would have never found that case. And remember, this is a shared experience, so please tell a friend. I want to talk about the cases you want to talk about, and I want to share those cases with your friends so you guys can talk about them. We always love and appreciate 5-star reviews here and positive comments at Rise in Crime. Please like and follow all of our social media accounts and our YouTube accounts at Oh No Media. That's Rise in Crime, Murder with My Husband, and Into the Dark. You can join me again on Thursday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.